This is the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority, City of Crescent City, County of Del Norte, solid waste meeting for Wednesday, April 9th. It is 3:30. So at this time, we will do a Pledge of Allegiance, and Mr. Ward, would you please lead us? The board will hold closed session if necessary, which is on the agenda today at the end of the open portion of today's meeting. At this time, we will open up the dais for public comments. Is there anyone in the office, in the center, who wishes to make public comments at this time? Please come up, and we have some nice new notes on our microphones to speak directly into the mic. So we'll ask you to do that.
Well, I'll do my best. Hi, I'm Patricia Black, and I'm a city resident and therefore also a county resident. And I've been thinking about the comments that were made at the end of the last meeting. And one of the ones that I was thinking was the one that Commissioner Sullivan made about money and deficits. And this is my question and concern. So I don't know a lot about budgets. I'm on the mission committee of my church. I was on the board of a volunteer organization, so I'm familiar with bitty budgets, not big budgets. But in those capacities, every month we get a report saying, how are we doing? What's the balance? How are we doing? And then at the end, it's no surprise if there's a deficit. So I guess my question is, if as a board member, if there was a deficit coming up 4 years in a row, I know, like at my church, that would be my shared responsibility to figure out what was going on. And so I'm a little uncertain why that's put out there as being, the implication that I'm getting is that that falls on staff rather than on the board. And I'm not sure if I understood that right or not. The other thing is the question about us needing to be concerned about the missing money. My understanding was that you guys had appointed someone to investigate that, had referred it to the sheriff, and were waiting for a report. So at this point, I don't know what I would be talking about, but I'm kind of getting to the point where after 9 months, there's all these, it's not just here, it's out in the community. There's all these innuendos. Oh, if you only knew the truth, you would know blank. And I don't think that's fair. So I think it's really important for this board to say, give us the facts, get them out to the public, and then we'll be really concerned or not, depending on what the result is. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Black. Any other public comments at this time?
Elizabeth Henry, county resident. Also some thoughts about last week's meeting. And I just wanted to say I share Commissioner Wilson's concern about the price hikes that have happened with businesses. And I'd be shocked too if I got a bill that doubled the amount I was paying. But you know what's lacking are facts. We need facts. Commissioner Wilson has family businesses, her parents have businesses. They can quote facts, they know what happened to them, but there are a lot of other businesses out in the community. What's happening there, and does the board know? I'm not sure you do, and I think that would be important to know. I would like to see the board request from Recology if they're able to give the kind of information that would provide rates before and after, tonnage, whatever information from commercial customers that's available. And if Recology can't do that because of some privacy issues, how about inviting Lori Poole here? And she's worked with, I think, businesses, the school district, to reduce waste costs by introducing recycling in various ways. So it would be a positive thing to do. It would show the community that you care and that you're working on trying to bring their costs down. So facts and figures are needed. I'm just really sorry that they weren't included. This issue wasn't included in the RFP to the consultant. I think that they might have been able to look into it in a different way and provide some needed information. So it's too late for that, but I hope that you will consider one of the options of getting more facts and figures on what's happening in the community as far as businesses, and then we'll all be on the same page, you know, what we're talking about, because we don't know. I'm not a business person. I don't own a business, so you know, what are the facts? So thank you. I hope you can do something.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments at this time? Well, seeing none, we'll close the public comments. And I know we did not...
Mr. Chair, if I
go
could
ahead.
address a couple things that were put out in public comment. Facts are $29,000 missing under the previous director's watch. That's a fact. That was a criminal investigation, not anybody we hired. The Sheriff's Department looked into it. So that's a fact. $29,000 is a lot of money to be missing. Additionally, the net deficits on audits were brought to the previous board's attention several times through the Board of Supervisors. I know Supervisor Henningsen brought it to former Director Hendrick's attention several times when they presented the budget here. We were shined on. And that was part of the ad hoc report to the Authority Board at that time. We were shined on. So that's kind of where we're at, why we're at this point where we're talking about this right now, is they did run that. It's in black and white. You can look at factually look at the audit reports, and it shows it there, and a lack of cash controls, which, by the way, I do want to add into my minutes because it was left out of the minutes from what we're going to vote on in a few minutes. But that's the reality of why we're at where we're at right now.
Oh, hold on 1 second. We don't want to have the banter back and forth. First of all, are there any other board comments? Commissioner Wilson.
Yes, thank you so much for asking about the facts and figures. And what I did was, this time I know that I commented in regards to what was happening to businesses. And so my next door neighbor told me that someone went in representing themselves as a friend of mine and asked about what their current garbage rates are. And this person, Becky McCain, I do not know who she is, but they told her what the current rates are. And so with that in mind, what I did was I asked for them to give a record of what their rates were when the new contract went into place. And so they printed out this history ledger for the Apple Peddler. And it shows here when it first went into place here, all these notes all over here, that it was $1,908. They paid in July, August $1,908, $1,913. Dollars a month. So here's a kind of a fact sheet that you would be asking for. After that point in time, they did what most of us businesses did, is that we started doing different things. They got rid of their service for the cardboard with Recology, and they got a different vendor. They started doing some other items. So the same thing for me. My bill went up. I started, I'm hauling my own now. So my bill's not as high. So the problem with some of these figures, getting these figures, is that people change their behavior. So I did want to submit this one into the public record. I brought a copy of the Apple Peddler history ledger for their bills, and this will reflect the Recology bills that were in place. And so I don't know who I give that to. And so that's history. And then also I did have a copy of the one from the school district that Rodney Jan had given me. It was given on a school board agenda from 9/11, and in here it states that the estimated annual cost increase without changes would have been $87,738. They did make changes. They were Recology was nice enough to work with them, and they were able to get their bill down. And but this again was what a lot of the businesses, they weren't faced with something this dramatic. But these two things will show, other than myself, what happened to the businesses. So that I'd like to submit as some facts. And I did ask the R3 consultants to look into the rates. And unfortunately, they told me because it was part of a contract that it was out of their control, and that they would not have any ability to make a change at that. So I did submit that under the first draft to look into those things, and they said that they could not, it was not part of the scope of the work, and they had no control over that. So those are the things, anyway, that I came up with for facts and figures, because I know somebody, are you Miss McCain? No, I don't know who she is. So anyway, she was doing some research on her own, so I thought I would present what's happened.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson. And are there any other board comments? Commissioner Holly or Commissioner Gastineau? I would like to respond to Ms. Black also, and I would like to respond to your comments and to both people who addressed us. I want to get to the facts too. We all want to get to the facts. We want to get to the truth. But you're dealing with police reports that have yet to have been released, and it's very dangerous to rush on this. There are people's reputations on the line here when and if that report is there. So I'm sorry to apologize for the slow process, but I think it's prudent that these matters not be discussed until such time as we have an actual police or sheriff's report on this. The least of which, we don't want to besmirch anyone, we don't want to associate anybody with this missing money, and that is why I've been perhaps overly cautious on how we proceed on that. And I wanted to explain that to you at this point so you're aware, even though you want to get to this and there is a rush to, not a rush, but a desire for this information, we will be moving slowly on this thing. Go ahead, Commissioner Wilson.
Say one thing. The sheriff's report is completed and has been completed. What's happened is that the victim in this case has asked that it not be released publicly. And so I know I have no idea why. I haven't read the report myself, but that would have been the county. And so it was kind of an unusual circumstance. I would like to find out, what's going on with that.
Well,
I don't know why it cannot be released.
Okay, well, I have instructed our counsel to contact the detective who is conducting this, the investigation, and perhaps that our counsel will report back what information she can have. But please understand that we're moving cautiously on this because people's reputations are on the line. All right, now, no other further comments. We'll close all comments here, and we'll move on to the Del Norte Solid Waste Task Force discussion about meeting March 31st, 2014. Mr. Nunn, are you here? Yes. Would you please give us a report?
There's not a lot to report. We're always looking for direction. I hope that the board will consider directives for us, give us something to do. We actually, at the last meeting, voted a motion to reduce the meetings to every 2 months. We're also down a few people, so I don't know if there's a set amount of people we're supposed to have. We were trying to figure out if that's a set amount. I think it's actually set by the board, so if you want to replace some of the people who have left the task force, then we need to do the hiring, advertisement, I believe, and everything else to do with it. Or we can keep it at the amount, but that, I think, is up to the board. So, but most of all, please think about a directive, give us that directive, and give us something to sink our teeth into. We do have I called it the wrong item. I think I called it a household hazardous waste report. That's actually, I forget the name now, Ted.
We have a 5-year review coming up that we'll be reviewing with the task force.
Yeah, thank you. And we're working on that. That's one of the mandated things. But other than that, we create our own things to consider doing. And late last year, I think it was, we all voted to ask the board what they would direct, and we're still asking for that. So give us a task. And that's about it. Any questions?
Commissioners, any questions for Wes Nunn?
Wasn't it the task force asking that the body be reduced from 11 people to a smaller quantity, in that it makes it easier to get a quorum.
Oh,
So
right,
right now,
yeah.
the task force actually is at 11 people, and, which is quite large. And in my opinion, I think 7 would be an appropriate number, or, 9 if you have to, but 11 is very difficult, and there's been several times that there has not been a task force.
Yeah, I'd agree
What do
with
you
that.
guys think about that?
I would concur with that. I would just ask you, Wes, what are you doing for outreach? How are you recruiting new members to bring before this, the authority board? Or what process do we have to attract, if you have volunteers who are not coming to your meetings, then what are you doing? What are we doing about that? I guess I'm asking you the question. Do you want us to recruit for you? What's your mindset?
Well, actually, there's bylaws that I have to send out that reach out to the people. There's a few that have not come to quite a few of the meetings, and they'll have a choice of coming to more meetings or dropping out. And once that happens, that'll help us get a quorum more frequently. As far as reaching out and looking for more volunteers, that's, I think, the board's choice. And again, as Mary put it, it depends on how many people you want on that task force, ultimately.
I believe that the bylaws state that you can only miss 2 meetings, and there have been several people that have missed 2 meetings in a row, and so Mr. Nunn is sending out a notification to them, and at that point in time, depending upon if they wish to continue, then I suppose we would have a good idea of the number of people that could be reduced, because it would be a shame to reduce it to 7 and then all of a sudden 8 people want to continue. But normally, I don't know, was it 6 or 7 people there usually? So, I mean, 6 is pretty common.
What's the board's pleasure in recruiting more members for the task force?
It doesn't seem like it's necessary right now when there's no mandates. We need to meet immediately. It just seems like it's hard. People want to do something that's meaningful, and right now we don't have those kind of tasks for them to do. So I would say let attrition take care of itself.
Other comments at this time?
Well, in the bylaws, is there a number that's set?
There isn't a specific number that's set.
But they do need a quorum if they have a certain
Exactly.
amount.
Exactly.
Are they registered, or they just come and go?
No, they're appointed by the Board of Supervisors typically. Also, some members are recommended by the City Council, but they're ultimately ratified by the Board of Supervisors. Previously, when there have been absences or vacancies, the board has directed us to advertise for those vacancies, and then applications are submitted and then the appointments are made.
I would think that you guys want to get your bylaws in order to have a certain amount for the task force. That way they can always count on possible quorum at any time. And because I remember when I was on the Business Improvement District Board, we had 15 was our board, and you never got more than like 5 there at a time, so you could never do any business. So if you guys want to work on that as a mandate and, maybe structure you guys a little bit better at the task force, that might be something to do.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and agendize possible passing of a bylaw that would set the amount.
So I'm hearing consensus that there's nothing at this time. Perhaps in the next meeting, we'll address that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Nunn. All right, we'll move on to the consent. Yes. Yes, you do have an opportunity to make a public comment on this agenda item. Okay.
I actually meant to include this in my first remarks, and I was thinking another body that could really help to get information about what's happening in the business community is a local task force. It would be very easy for them to go out, a couple of them at a time, and talk to businesses. You know, what's going on? Are you satisfied? We care about what's going on in your business. Are you paying too much? I mean, I think it would be a really good PR thing to have them do that and familiarize themselves with what's going on out there and possibly bring problems to the board. So that was my thought, and it would give them, I think, a really, something to do that would be helpful to you. So, thanks.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I hope they're going to bring solutions, not more problems. We've got a few of those. All right, but your notes are well taken. Okay, thank you. We will move now on to hearing no further comments from our board. We'll move on to consent agenda. Commissioner Sullivan, I understand you want to pull 2.1 and make some corrections on that?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on and we'll pull 2.1 out. And Alex, I'll entertain a motion for two.
That would be 2.2.
Okay. Okay, 2.2, approved minutes from the special session. I correct that. So we'll pull 2.2. So now, and items number 2.1 is the approve the minutes from March 12th, and items 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, and 2.6. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve those consent agendas and also pull 2.2.
2.2 is pulled. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve consent agenda items 2.1, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, and 2.6. Karen, if you'd call the roll, call the clerk, the roll on that for it.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Chairman Gitlin?
Yes. Okay, let's pull out at this time 2.2, approved minutes special session Tuesday, April 1st, 2014. Commissioner Sullivan, you wanted to make some corrections.
Yeah, I think there was a couple things left out under my remarks, and one, there's no mention of the 4 audits that we received showing a net deficit and lack of cash controls at the authority, and I did mention that in my comment. I went back through the video. Additionally, yeah, the comment of that four audits have been received by the authority with showing net deficits in their budget as well as lack of cash controls. And then also on the shredding of documents, I had mentioned prior to 2009 the authority had shredded documents. Not that documents were shredded, it's specifically what entity shredded them.
All right, those are your changes?
Yeah.
So just for the record, let me just repeat that back. You want included in the minutes on 2.2 the 4 audits showing a net deficit, fiscal cash controls, the lack of mentioning of cash controls, and the shredding of documents by the authority in 2009 or since 2000? Prior to 2009?
Prior to 2009.
Okay, Karen, do you have that?
I do, however, could I get a page number? Do you have a page numbers on those comments so that, I didn't prepare those minutes, so.
It would be third page of the minutes.
Okay, for both
There's
of
no
them?
numbers. What's that?
Third
Yes.
page for both of those?
Yeah, they're both on the same
All right,
same
thank
spot.
you.
Chair Gitlin?
Go ahead,
Also,
Commissioner Hawley.
on the 3rd page, in paragraph 2 and paragraph 4, the comment was Commissioner Hawley indicated he had comments he wished to make regarding 7.2 item. It was, when I was discussing that, I was interested in knowing what the process was going to be for anyone to make comments, not just myself.
So correct the verbiage. How do you want it to?
This is under
Page 3 and page 4?
page 3. Aren't we dealing with the March?
No, we're dealing with the.
It's the
April.
it's the
Okay.
April 1st special
Then
session.
it's not substantive, never mind.
Okay, so we'll delete that. Okay, so Commissioner Sullivan, I'm presuming that's a motion?
Yeah,
You'll
I'll
do
move
that?
to approve with
I'll
the-
entertain a motion, a second to Commissioner Sullivan's motion, noting the 4 audits and noting those deficits on that, cash control questions, and the shredding of documents by the authority prior to 2009. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Karen, if you would close off board comments. Okay.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Chairman Gitlin?
Yes. Okay. So we have approved the consent agenda items 2.1 to 2.6. We've also approved 2.2. Let us move on, end the consent agenda, and move on to the Director and Treasurer's report. Mr. Ward, Acting Director's Report 3.1.
Yes, thank you, Chair Gilliland. So, of course, as always, this is a written report and is more comprehensive than my verbal remarks, but I'll highlight some of the items that are not otherwise addressed on the agenda. We do have an issue that we may visit again in future months, in that there is some damage to the asphalt immediately below the ramp from the exit scale at the transfer station, and that's an ongoing issue. So we'll be looking at ways that we might be able to repair that, and I've started that conversation with Joel Wallen, trying to figure out the most cost-effective and expeditious way to do it. But because it is in a main traffic area, we'd almost certainly have to do it during a holiday. But like I said, we'll probably be bringing that discussion in a more detailed format at some future meeting. I did meet with the Delaware County Auditor, Sherritt Cron from the Auditor's Office, the Authority Treasurer, and the Authority's Administrative Assistant regarding the list of Authority fiscal controls and outstanding accounts receivable, and we'll be talking about that later in the meeting. I also met with the County CAO, Jay Serena, Neil Lopez, the Delaware County Auditor, Clinton Shad, and County Counsel, Gretchen Stur, regarding the Pledge of Revenue Agreement. Their main concern appeared to be associated with the expectation that the city would also be a signatory to this document. And so we requested an opinion on this matter from the legal staff at Cal Recycle prior to bringing this item to the County Board of Supervisors for action. Staff trainings with regards to FEMA requirements continue to be temporarily deferred, though we are receiving monthly reminders from the county of this. And unfortunately, because we were not up on that training when the county went through the exercise of the earthquake and tsunami preparedness, unfortunately, at the transfer station, we were not quite prepared. Although we're just outside the tsunami zone and we're at one point identified as an evacuation point. So to partially address this ongoing issue, on April 22nd, the Authority and Hambro WSG are planning on having a joint safety meeting to better prepare for potential earthquakes and tsunamis, and we'll have a specialized training in that regard. The number of and intensity of tasks that are being deferred by staff are mounting, and staff strongly recommend that the Authority allow time to allow us to prepare a budget for the next meeting, as that is an urgent priority. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, on the Acting Director's report, any comments, please? I had one question regarding the aging sheet that you forwarded, Ted. There were some significant amounts, including one that's over 90 days past due for $10,377.99. Am I reading that correctly? I'm on Redwood National. Well, no, hold on.
Yes, actually, that's an excellent point. And
Redwood, is it? I'm quite sure I have the right line. Redwood National Park.
That's correct.
Not Redwood Cove Community Center.
No, it's Redwood National and State Parks,
Okay.
and there's approximately $11,000 outstanding, and we have every expectation that that amount will be paid, but it has been delayed because we have been required to work it through the system that Redwood National and State Park has for paying those accounts. And so we've been jumping through a number of hoops, and we're almost through the last hoop, but we were not at that point at the time that this report was published.
You know, and I'm only looking at the ones that are at least 90 days old. There's some significant dollars here. There's an 1,800 and I guess that's 1885 from Lehman Property Management. I still see well, it looks like they're using some services. What's going on with some of these aging report, negative reports? Nothing, I'm not really concerned about the smaller amounts, but the ones that are over $1,000. Here's one for U.S. Forest Service, which I'm going to presume is part of Redwood National Park. Is that the same issue you're having with that? $1,120.96. And then Your Creation, don't know who they are, 1,092. These are all over 90 days.
Yes, and we're corresponding with them, and as the board may remember, we've been working to try to set up a QuickBooks system so that we can actually accrue penalties for overdue accounts. And we've already established the communication that we will be doing that, but we do not yet have the system in place. So we are in communication with all of those larger accounts that have outstanding balances, and we're trying to get as much money as we can. They each have their special story.
Installment, some kind of a movement toward lowering that number. I think that's...
I totally concur with that direction, and we are working towards that.
Okay,
Can I have some
go ahead. Any
comments?
other board comments?
Yes, just was noting again that it looks as if the accounts receivable has been adjusted.
Yes, it's gone down quite a bit. Thank you for noticing.
So I've been pounding the table about this since July. It's been 138,000 and
Right.
holding.
Would you like a partial explanation?
Well, just give me the good news. It looks
Okay,
like
the
it's
good
down
news
to
is that
17.
the last month it was 138,895, and this month it's 17,443. And 11,000 of that is the Redwood National State Park, which outstanding payment, which you correctly identified. And there's about 6,000 where we're trying to sort out the history regarding the Abandoned Vehicles Authority, blight abatement, and those accounts. And so there's about 6,000 outstanding there. We're trying to make sure that we all have exactly the same numbers before those monies get transferred.
So again, it's gone down, the accounts receivable from 138,000 down to 17,000. Now, will this figure be adjusted on a monthly basis?
We of course plan on bringing it down to zero because this accounts receivable, the accounts receivable, this particular line is the months that where we're in between a cash and accrual system to balance out the county's books. So what this amount is supposed to represent is the amount that was expected to be received during those 3 months, and hopefully it does eventually ratchet down towards zero.
And can you explain why it looks like there's a loss this month of $45,000, $399 of expenditures over revenue?
And, well, there were more expenditures this month than in prior months, and revenues were a little bit down, and some of our consulting bills were all coming due at the same time.
Well, yeah.
Mr. Taylor, you're going to give us a treasurer's report in a moment. Why don't you hold your comments until then? I think you're up next, Richie. So before we answer that question, unless there's anything else, any other board comments regarding the acting director's report?
I just have one
Go
quick
ahead,
question.
Commissioner Hahn.
On page 3, where it's to-do list, and number 4 on the to-do list is request reimbursement from Paint Care for outreach service expenses that have been pre-approved by them and for which the authority has not yet been reimbursed.
Yes.
What does that take and how much are we talking about?
We're not talking about a lot. It was a month of outreach in the Del Norte Triplicate and on Bicoastal Media, so that's KCRE and KPOD. And it was outreach to promote our expanded paint recycling program that we have through Paint Care. And at the beginning of kicking off this program, Paint Care said they would be happy to pay for those expenses. The money was not placed up front, and so we paid the bill, and we're going to invoice them probably in the next couple of days.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll close off and we'll move on to, unless there are any other board comments, we'll move on to 3.2, Treasurer Controller's Report. Richie Taylor, would you please come up and give us a report? And then also answer, if you would, Commissioner Wilson's request for information on her question she brought to your
Yes,
attention.
I get these reports the same time you did. In fact, I was later than you guys. I got them on Monday. But as of March 31st, we have $451,549.39 in our coffers, and we also have $198,177.17 in with the iBank loan deposit held by the county. Then I turned over, and I was just telling Mary before the meeting I hadn't had a chance to look at it, but I got a chance to look at it. And for the month of February, not March, February, we ran a loss of $45,399.92, of which $46,964.69 was our payment on our iBank loan that we paid to the county. So without that loan payment, we would have broken even that month. But for the 8 months ended the end of February, we have a profit of $79,835.52.
Okay, that
Yeah,
clarifies it.
check the
Encouraging.
dates. The one is March 31st and the other one is February 28th.
Okay. March 31st and February 20th?
March 31st and the operating statement's February 28th.
Oh,
And I didn't notice it so I talked to you about it.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor. We'll move on to 3.3, claims approved by Treasurer and Director for March 2014. That's again you, Mr. Taylor. Is there anything else that we need to be aware of here? Come on up. So you're on television. We got to make sure.
9 months ago, there was a little bit of, Ted was kind of lost, he needed a little help, so I said I would step forward and try and help him. And I've been doing that for 9 months, but I kind of hit a period of February, March, and April where I can't help a lot. And you'll notice in the claims, one of them is to me for $800 for February. That means I could give him 10 hours. That's not enough to get all the work done. He's working with, everybody's always worked with me through tax season. But as Ted will tell you, we're kind of falling behind. I'll have more time for him in a week or so, but I just been kind of faking it to get through, so.
That's
Can I
pending
ask a
any
question?
extensions people are going to pose on you. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Commissioner Wilson.
I had an opportunity to have a meeting with the auditors this last week regarding the 10-year trend analysis that I put together. They had an opportunity to review the numbers and to the accuracy, and we had a meeting, and in that meeting, I'm going to bring up a little bit later in the agenda the details of it, but they were talking about the QuickBooks that's moving forward, you know, to try and clarify information. And I was kind of surprised for sure that I felt that was being put together, that program was being put together because it was, staff felt that that's something that I wanted to have happen. And I just don't want to be adding work to you know, what the load is over there. I'm trying to get information. I'm kind of been more reliant on the auditor's numbers at this point in time. And so I know we've talked about QuickBooks and all that, and I just don't want to be adding work over there. That's not my intent. I can certainly get my numbers, you know, a little bit later through the auditor instead. So I don't know what's going on with that program, but I hope I'm not trying to make more work over there and have a third set of books made for me to try and, you know, get the audited numbers with the numbers that we receive here on the board. So that is not my intent at all. And
You're not the first commissioner to ever be kind of confused by the July, August, and September financial statements. Started before you were on here, and it was supervisors and different people that are used to an accrual system, and they get hit with this system, and the questions come up, and I've talked with the auditors back before Clint. I talked with Christie that there would be a way you could add the receivables and the payables so that you would get a better picture for the July, August, and September and where we are, and it never quite fit with our system. And so it just kind of went on this way. And then it came up in talking with Sean Slater, who installed the system that we have with the scales, that the QuickBooks is already out there. And once we get it set up, it could run in unison with the county, and you would have an accrual system, and we could reconcile the county fairly easily. Now, we haven't had enough staff out there to do that yet. So if the board doesn't want to do that, that's fine with me, but I think, it's something I've been pushing for if I said 20 years, I'd be exaggerating. For a long time, I've been pushing to have an accrual system so that things would jump out here and you'd know what happened. You'd just have a better picture.
So,
of the accrual.
Mr. Taylor, what are you asking this board to
Nothing.
consider at this time?
No, I'm just responding to hearing. And if the board is not interested in an accrual system, that was going to be the last thing that gets done, I would think. I think we're going to catch everything else up and then try and put that in, but we can drop that priority if you want.
I'm kind of the opinion to do that, in that where I'm finding I'm going with these numbers, the more I've been getting into the numbers, and of course I've made my own charts, and and so then I'm just kind of waiting longer and getting the audited numbers. Same thing happened to me, you know, when I did my 10-year analysis. I got the figures from out at the authority from Ted, and then later after I got it done, I realized they weren't the audited numbers, and so then all that work was for naught. So I had to start over again. So what I've learned through this is that I'm just I'm reliant on the auditor's numbers, and so because of that, then I don't know that there would be a reason to have the system that you're talking about. It's behind, granted, but as far as time, getting it a little bit later, but I just don't know that all the work and effort on something that I'm not using at this point in time so much anymore, because I'm finding just going to the audited numbers is the best way to do it.
Yeah, and that's the only time you get an accrual basis is of June 30th when they come and do the audit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I guess my explanation would, once it got going, I don't think would that be hard to give you an accrual basis every month, but we are behind. So
yeah,
it's like
a third set of books, and it's extra work for you guys, and I just see issues having all the different systems and then trying to make them, you know, all the extra work and time, and so that's my concern with it, and I don't feel that it's I personally don't feel that it's a priority at this time, and I know you're busy, but...
Okay, so let's move on, unless there's no action. Now, just for a second, Mr. Taylor, we kind of tangentially touched on 3.4 and 3.5. We kind of jumped around, and I brought some things to the attention of the public regarding the aging sheet. So is there anything else on 3.4 or 3.5, Mr. Taylor, that you'd like to add? And then I'll defer to Acting Director Ward to respond to anything in 3.3, 4, and 5 accordingly.
No, not for me.
Okay, thank you. And
thank you.
Ted, I'll move on to, is there anything else that you've not mentioned in either claims approved, monthly cash and charge reports, or earned revenue comparisons at this point?
The revenue comparisons as presented in 3.5 indicate that our revenues are lagging a little bit from projections, but that's really not uncommon for this time of year. Winter's generally a little bit slower, spring and summer are generally a little bit higher.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so that will end the director's and treasurer's reports accordingly. Let's move on to discussion action items. Landfill closure, 4.1, discussion, possible action regarding submittal of request to Cal Recycle regarding reduction of the post-closure maintenance financial assurance multiplier for the Crescent City landfill. Ted?
This is actually standing direction and a report for the board's just recognition that we do this on an annual basis because of the standing direction. Essentially, we apply to Cal Recycle each year to try to get this multiplier reduced, which reduces our liability as indicated on our books. And so this has to do with our finances as audited. And it does make a big difference in terms of that reduced multiplier in that, for instance, reducing this multiplier will reduce our liabilities by about $455,000. So it's definitely worth doing. But that said, there's no further action required.
Okay, so there's no action. The alternative would be the board could decline to direct you.
That's correct.
To apply for additional reductions.
That would be a change of direction.
In this multiplier, and I don't see that there's anybody who's looking in that direction, so we'll move on from there. 4.2, discussion, possible action regarding outstanding unpaid balance of waste discharge requirement fee, preliminary data from landfill investigation wells, and change order 1 with Bush Geotechnical Consultants for extra work associated with borehole well installation monitoring and advice and review regarding preliminary report regarding these investigation wells for the Regional Water Quality Control Board in the amount of $8,500. Ted?
Yes, I have a PowerPoint on this, which we'll slowly be bringing up. But the bottom line is that I met with the county engineer as well as engineering tech, Rick Lochstead, and Bob Bush of Bush Engineering, Bush Geotechnical Consultants, about some of the work that they've done. So if you'll allow me to present from here. So this is the Crescent City landfill aerial photo, and the little maroon box that says proposed piezometer locations, that's where we drilled the 2 new investigation wells. And we've already got preliminary data to do the investigation. We've actually looked at the groundwater contours. And so we developed these groundwater contours by essentially measuring the depth to the groundwater in those wells. And so and generally we refer to the water beneath the landfill as either being in the shallow or the deep aquifer. You can think of the landfill underground as kind of like a layer cake. You've got a layer of sand, then you've got a marsh deposit which impedes water flowing from one upper area to the lower area, and then you've got a lower water area. So generally throughout the landfill we will have shallow and deep wells. And so the Regional Water Quality Control Board similarly asked us to show what are the contours in the shallow and deep wells. And this is really the crux of the issue. This is old well W6W deep is actually mostly screened in the marsh deposit, meaning that the water can only get into that well either through the marsh deposit or within a couple feet right near the marsh deposit. So if the water level is actually below that point, that well does not give you an accurate indication as to what the actual water level is. Useful.
Board comments?
Okay, so this is not about the $8,500 bill that we got from them last time that was bid out at $3,300.
No, it's not exactly about that.
So, okay, it's very close enough.
It's not entirely unrelated in that we did get a bill that was considerably larger than their total contract amount. And in that bill, they did include an invoice for additional work that they did that was beyond the scope of work. So this change order would pay them for some of that work, but it also, more specifically, would help the authority in our efforts to convince the Regional Water Quality Control Board that we are less of a threat than they think we are.
So this will be paying for their increase. So again, their invoice was for $8,500, and they had bid it was going to be $3,300 to $3,600. So their invoice was quite a bit higher. So that was something that we at that time only paid the amount that they bid, and then Mr. Ward was going to talk with them regarding the outstanding balance, and so I thought that's what was covered here. But now, if I could just repeat what I think I heard, is that one of the wells is in an area that is not good because and you want to put in another well?
Well, actually, I need to correct that. The well that is in question, well W6W, is a very old well. That was not one of the new investigation wells that we drilled. But because of the quality of the data that we're getting out of that well, there's reasons to question whether or not it would be worth drilling an additional well, perhaps to gather additional information and make a more compelling case that the groundwater is not in fact flowing as directly towards the houses as these initial preliminary single sample event contours have shown.
So the well information that we're getting right now, you do not feel is sufficient in order to make our case that we would be able to justify moving us down from our rating, so we would get the lower state fee. So you're
yes.
suggesting that we do an additional well with this?
I'm suggesting that we work with Bush Geotechnical to decide whether or not it would be worthwhile to potentially drill an additional well.
Well, this does not include the drilling of a new well.
No, well, no, because first of all, it's important to realize Bush Geotechnical does not drill wells. They log wells and they do geotechnical analysis. So they're experts in terms of geotechnical analysis. They don't drill wells. But what they did for us when we were drilling the investigation wells is they logged the boreholes. So we could figure out exactly what was the distance to the marsh deposit and how far they drilled below and exactly where it was screened and all of the details regarding what was happening with the geomorphology below the ground.
You have to have those guys.
Yes.
Board comments, additional comments? I do have one, but I'll defer to any other board members who wish to ask a question. It doesn't say here how much it's going to cost to drill another well.
That's correct, because it really depends on the type of well and the location.
So
and as you may recall, last time we drilled these 2 investigation wells, they were located in an area that required us to build a road, so that was an additional cost as well.
Well, that's another question. You think we'll have to build another road?
Which is exactly why I'd like to engage them in this analysis, to look at what our opportunities are and the potential costs.
Well, before we move forward on this spending of money to drill wells or build additional roads, I'd like to know what, it sounds like we're rolling the dice, hoping we'll get some better numbers to lower our risk ratios, so we'll save some money. Is this what?
Yes, it's not a certain outcome.
So for my comfort zone, I would want to know how much money do we need to spend to possibly lower the fees charged by water quality from the current level to a lower level, and what that dollar figure would then be.
And that's part of why I want to engage them in this discussion, because I cannot answer that question for you. At this point in time, I believe, were we to submit the data that we have, I would not be surprised if our fee schedule remained the same.
You've gotten the test results back from the wells?
The results I just showed you on the display were what we have.
Elevation.
I just want our board members to be clear. We're talking about the expenditures of funds to build, to drill another well with the possibility. Is that?
I
keep
think
hearing
Ed's
that.
actually
Let me
saying
read
he wants
exactly-
to reach out to the
Okay.
Bush Tech and Geo Bush Technical and finding out what the cost would be, and then I assume you're going to bring it back to the board.
Yes, it
Yeah,
would be
yeah.
bringing this back to the board.
I'm fine with the director talking to him, find out what it is.
Okay.
I-
Well, the change order is $8,500.
Yes, I am recommending that we approve this change order, but specifically, this change order addresses the extra site visits caused by the inability for the drill rig to access the site on the first attempt, additional communication and administration time necessary due to the scheduling difficulties between Denswama and the drillers, lab tests, including sieving and grain size analysis for the selected samples, statistics, data, and graphs, and a short report explaining the site geology, stratigraphy, and implications of the information. That's stuff that they have already done. This change order also expands the scope of services to include review of data and documents related to the 2 new investigation wells and other well and water quality monitoring data from the Crescent City landfill, and advice to the authority regarding the potential costs and benefits of drilling additional wells at the landfill to augment this investigation. The scope of work also includes review and comment on up to 3 reports or correspondences related to these investigation wells, drafted by the authority and/or county staff. Finally, the additional budget includes up to 16 hours for on-site observations and production of 1 additional borehole well installation report, should such be required. So this would allow us to engage them, to talk about how to prepare our arguments in the most compelling way for the Regional Water Quality Control Board. And should they recommend that we drill an additional well, while they are not well drillers, included in the scope of work would be their monitoring and logging of that additional well.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on the request by the acting director.
I'll make a motion to approve.
This is the change order for $8,500.
Yes, this
Okay.
change order for $8,500. I would ask, though, that you ask them if they can find a suitable site next to our road.
I
Let's
totally
be clear.
concur.
Let's understand what this motion is going to do.
Okay.
So could you, well,
I'll
let me
make
read
a
it to you and
motion.
then let me have
Oh,
you
go
acknowledge it. Your motion, Commissioner Wilson, would add $8,500 which includes a discount for the principal's time of $984, totaling contract to $12,100. That will not exceed without prior written authorization from the authority. Are you comfortable with that motion?
Yes.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved and seconded, we'll
Discussion?
have discussion, okay?
That does include the outstanding amount. So that takes care of the outstanding amount.
Totally.
Plus, we get more work out of them. So, okay.
Yep.
Okay, well, that sounds like a good work on that, Ted.
Thank you.
Okay, that being discussed, any other board comments at this time? Okay, Karen, if you would.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes?
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Chairman Gitlin?
Yes. Okay. All right, let us move on to, that was 4.2. We'll move on to 5.0 collection franchise, 5.1, excuse me. Discussion, possible action regarding Green Ribbon Awards and public outreach planned in coordination with Recology Del Norte for the Youth and Family Fair, April 26, 2014, from 11 to 2 o'clock at the Del Norte County Fairgrounds. Okay, Ted?
This is a very similar report to the one you saw last month, just in case there were any additional suggestions from any board members about additional Green Ribbon Awards. We have nearly completed, with the assistance of Lisa Babcock, those Green Ribbon Awards, and they're just about ready for signature, but they weren't all completely ready, so I didn't bring them today. But we will be issuing those Green Ribbon Awards at the Youth and Family Fair at 1:15. So if at the board's pleasure, if you could care to designate a commissioner who might be there to hand them out, that would be great. If not, I will do so on the board's behalf.
And that would be April 26th, Ted?
April 26th at the Del Norte County Fairgrounds, yes.
Ted, were there numbers that were going to go on next to Del Norte School District and also Crescent Ace Hardware?
Yes, the Crescent Ace Hardware is 459 pounds, and I requested that number from the Del Norte County School District, through Lori Poole, and I did not have the number at the time we were printing the report, so my intent is
Do we know what that is?
Um,
Without it being in writing per se, but
off the top of my head, I do not know.
any, Tommy? Okay.
Okay, that's, what is the action on this?
So if the board would choose to designate a commissioner or the chair to issue those, that would be fine. If not, then designate that I issue them would be fine also.
The chair?
Do we have a volunteer?
Yeah, the chair.
Chair.
I got volunteered? Okay. Pending checking my calendar, the answer is yes.
All right, thank you.
That would be, what day is that?
That is a Saturday.
Saturday, okay.
And Ted, were we able to get anything, we were talking about putting the award recipients on the outside of the...
We have, I've not gotten to that yet, but we do have a display that I think we will be able to use for that purpose, and we will be able to print out the 11 by 17s. But I've very clearly heard that repeated request, and we do intend on following through with it.
That'd be nice for them.
Okay, having said that, any other board comments? We'll move on to the transfer station where we have no items to report, so we'll move on to General Solid Waste Authority Matters 7.1, discussion possible action regarding development, implementation, and monitoring of additional fiscal controls addressing regular practices of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. And Ted, what's yours? 7.1.
Sorry about that. So, starting at the end of July 2013, I've been working with Authority Treasurer and Controller Rich Taylor to try to oversee the fiscal administration of the authority. And towards that end, I am very eager to provide public reassurance that the authority has already put procedures in place to accurately and reliably account for the revenues at facilities administered by the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. I also wish for the public's benefit to document for the board, the treasurer, controller, the county auditor, and the general public, and the external auditing firm of Smith & Newell of what these proposed fiscal controls are, and to clarify those fiscal controls that are to be implemented and monitored by authority staff and the current acting director and any successors. So this includes several new fiscal controls introduced since July 2013, and these warrant some additional explanation. The authority policy adopted in September 2013 for writing off bad debts owed to the authority added the following regular fiscal controls: regular review of checks with insufficient funds, conferring with the collections department regarding referrals on a monthly basis, annual preparation of a list of bad checks and bad debts that are over 3 years old, less than $50, or debts owed to the authority for which additional or partial or final collection is unlikely, and conferring with the Del Norte County Auditor regarding bad debts to be written off annually with the attached report prepared for review and or approval by the authority board. So the fiscal controls that are on your screen are a summary of the fiscal controls we have in place at the authority. And so you can see that we have daily, monthly, quarterly, biennial, and annual fiscal controls. And those with the asterisk next to them are new controls that have been introduced since July 2013. I'd be happy to discuss any of these, but they are already largely in place and being rolled out. And as Commissioner Chair Gitlin has pointed out, there have been 3 surprise cash counts, and they have all come down to the penny. So I'm proud to say that this authority can be reassured that those fiscal controls are in place, and to the extent that we've investigated, they've been proved to be effective.
Okay, that's your report. Board comments, please. I'll get the public, give you a public opportunity to speak in just a moment on 7.1. Board comments from any commissioners?
It looks as if there are several different things on here that are similar in business when you are trying to track your income and your tapes. For me, I would be asking some very detailed questions in regards to the forms that you are using. And I don't know if there's a way that I might be able to take a look at some of those just to see if you're using, some of the information that comes off the cash register that I've found helpful over the years, that I track, beginning and ending numbers, transaction numbers. Every time the tills open and close, I have a lot of different little things. So I'd have to kind of see the actual forms that you're using, if I possibly could. Then
You're welcome.
To see what you have exactly. I think I've dropped a few of mine off over there, but they're not that difficult. It's just little things that later on, when you try and find something, it makes it easier to find any indiscrepancies.
We'd be happy to go over the controls and the forms that we use.
Any other board comments? Well, I have this to say. I would encourage our auditor, controller, and our treasurer to continue their unannounced visits. It seems to be working, and the bottom line is the results. The manner in which it gets done is, to me, secondary to the fact that the dollars are matching up penny for penny. So I want to say good work to our treasurer and our auditor, controller, and I would encourage you, as I'm sure the board would, to continue your good efforts in what you're doing. I'll let the public. Yes, I'm sorry.
I was just wondering, I guess a part of this analysis when you're dealing with the check situation is to take a look at the percentages of good checks to bad checks. I mean, at some point, we may have to make a decision not to take checks. And so I just like to know what that looks like, so we know whether or not it's worth our while to do so.
I'd like to respond to that, because at some point last year I did make that very suggestion, that we discontinue cash and we discontinue checks, because it was problematic, and cash was disappearing and checks were bouncing, or that was the perception in my mind, and I suggested moving to some kind of an ATM card. And if and I don't think I enjoyed the consensus of the rest of the board at that time. Now, Mr. Holly, would you like to revisit that and
Well,
agendize that?
if it's a part of the process, it would be an easy thing to pull that out. If you're doing an analysis periodically on this, just figure out, you know, what is the percentage and figure out how deep the problem really is before we go into alternatives.
And I think since the deposits have been made in a more timely basis, that the amount of bad checks has plummeted. Since these procedures have gone into play, do you have the number of bad checks? I mean, it is just, there was only like 2.
Yes, I believe it's less than 5, but
It's less than 5 now,
really
and
not
it's been
very
months
many.
and months and
See,
months.
I had no idea.
Okay,
it was
so
500.
However, there are still a good number of checks on that bad checks list that we do need to ultimately resolve and reconcile with the county auditor. So we all agree as to which checks we are still pursuing collections on and which ones we are not.
The problem, I believe, before was that they were holding those checks to cover that money, and that was, so it was up to, what, 6 weeks? I don't want to confuse the issue, but they were being held for 6 weeks and then deposited, and that caused a lot of problem. It was a check.
Well, I think you've answered it.
Buyback.
Apparently, it's not the problem it used
All
to
right,
be.
and let me cut this conversation a little brief, just to say that it is not it is no longer a problem, at least not at a level that it was in previous months or years. So we seem to have a control over it, and having said that, I'll entertain any possible change in the way we take money in, whether it's checks or cash, if the board so chooses to revisit that, whether checks should be taken at all or whether cash should be taken at all. We can discuss at an upcoming meeting if the commissioners wish to have that discussion again. So we'll move on, and I'll let the public have an opportunity to move on 7.1. So if anyone from the public wishes to address this, I'll let you have your time at the dais. Anybody from the public this time? Okay, we'll move on. And yes, okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Lonsdale. And again, Mr. Lonsdale, this is 7.1, discussion and action regarding development, implementation, and monitoring of additional fiscal controls addressing regular practices of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Bill Lonsdale and I live in Crescent City. I'd like to speak for a moment to the proposal that we do away with cash, or consider doing away with cash, and urge caution about that. I'd like to read a document. This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. We may have a problem in trying to do away with that. Thank you.
Well stated, sir. And I speak for myself, not for the board. The money is still money. Okay, we'll move on now. If there are no further comments, we'll bring it back to the board. And is there any action the board wishes to take on development, implementation, and monitoring additional fiscal controls addressing regular practices of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority? Is there any actions board wishes to take at this time?
I think they're doing definitely a much improved job.
Okay.
And
So recognition that we have seemed to have a control of the problem and it's not manifesting itself in a negative way is how this board feels by consensus? Okay, then we'll move on to 7.2 at this time. Discussion and possible action regarding process for recruiting and appointing the public commissioner, of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. Mr. Ward, go ahead.
In reviewing the first amended JPA agreement and the bylaws of the authority, I can only say that it is not clear in either of those documents in my review of them as to what the appropriate term for the public member would be. That said, it appears that on a practical basis, most commissioners have a one-year term in that the commissioners are appointed by either the chair of the Board of Supervisors or the mayor of the City Council, and then as those roles change each year, those appointments can also change, or they can be remade. The public member is not distinguished in any way in those documents, and so the previous public member that served in that capacity prior to the 12-member board was Sarah Samples, and she served from January 2011 to November 2011. And then after that point, there was a 10-member board and the entire city council, the entire board of supervisors. There was not a separate public member during that period of time. So that said, Ms. Wilson was appointed on April 23rd, 2013, and she called me to ask, so how long is my term? Am I up? What's happening? And I appreciate the call. And all I can say is that it's not entirely clear. So the board could direct staff to publish public notices in the Del Norte Triplicate, and that the authority could accept applications through April 30th, and we could bring those to the May meeting. Or the board could alternatively further direct staff to consider changes to the bylaws at a subsequent authority meeting to more clearly specify the term of the public commissioner. The board could also change the submittal date for applicants to this position, or otherwise provide additional direction to staff as to how to advertise this process. Or the board could reappoint Public Commissioner Wilson if she would accept such an appointment.
I'm going to just have Council Rice opine in, because I read the bylaw too. The word annual is the one that sticks out in my mind. It's an annual appointment. That to me, once a year. Is this the, can we, if Ms. Commissioner Wilson wishes to re-up again, can this board take action on that at the next meeting?
I think we need to set a process. What appears to have happened is, at one point, I think they were 4-year terms, and then that language was taken out of the agreement, and it was also required that on an annual basis, the city and the county the city and the county have to agree on the public member on an annual basis. So if you, right now, as I see it, it's a 1-year term. It would be possible for this board to make it a longer term if that seems kind of arduous to go out every year and have to advertise and recruit a new member. We could do that. If you wanted to do that, we could bring a change to the bylaws to the next meeting saying that the public member is a, say, a 2-year or a 3-year position. And at that point, if we approve that change to the bylaws, then at that meeting, we could also ask Ms. Wilson if she would like to continue for the remainder of that longer term, if that's the direction you wish to go in. If you want to make it a longer term, if we're going to stick with a 1-year term, then I believe we need to advertise and seek applicants for the next meeting.
Understand, and let the record show that the position is a voluntary position, no stipend is involved.
That's correct.
Yeah, so you did so, and I think we thank you, Commissioner Wilson, for giving of your time. I'm going to defer to our board for comment on this at this time, and then also to hear verbally whether Commissioner Wilson wishes to re-up for 1 more year.
You want to start?
Whoever. Yeah, I'm sorry, I should do public comment first. I was coming to that afterward. Public comment on this 7.2 item? None? Okay. Mr. Larson? I've got the order mixed up. I was going to do public comment after the board comments, so my apologies.
Andy Larson with the county. 1 year is too short for any commissioner. You're just getting into things. At least 2 years, I would think, would be handled. Or if Ms. Wilson wants to take a longer time, that would be fine. But when you appoint a public member, I think it should be at least 2 years, because there's too much that you get involved with.
Thank you. Go ahead, Elizabeth. Come up and re-identify yourself.
Elizabeth Henry, the county. I do appreciate Commissioner Wilson's work, and this has nothing to do with her, but I guess from legal counsel, what I'm thinking that it would be more, it would be clearer if you did advertisement this time and change the term for next time, because I think it's difficult to change terms while someone's sitting in the position. I just feel that way from previous service on a board of supervisors, that we would tend to not change it's kind of like mayor of New York, when when you want, and I'm not saying you wanted to stay in office, but that to me would be clear, that you end the one term and then you change the bylaws, and then you can reappoint Commissioner Wilson if she wants to continue. And other applicants can apply.
Thank you very much, Ms. Henry. So I'm going to bring it back to the board for comment, and I guess we're talking about two issues here. We're talking about the issue of changing the bylaws, and we are talking about the issue of moving forward that Commissioner Wilson has indicated she wishes to serve again. So I'll allow the board their comments at this time.
I agree with the public comment. I mean, I'm just in my second year at City Council, and there's so much you have to learn to get into the groove of it, even to, start processing all this information that we get every day. So it should be at least a 2-year term. And I also agree that we should re-advertise for it and then have Commissioner Wilson with everybody else this next time reapply. Of course, she's an incumbent, so she has an advantage on most of them, so it's always a good thing.
Commissioner Sullivan, did you have an
Well, I'm one of the main drivers to get away from the 4-year term. I thought that people kind of camped out on this board because they were also getting a stipend. And it used to be, and it seemed to be, the people in Ms. Wilson's position were former elected officials, which we needed to get somebody from the public there. I would be inclined to kind of take an in-between thing, is to finish the year out, to reappoint Ms. Wilson to finish this year out in January, float the applications, and start it as a 2-year process. I do agree, the comments, I think you need 2 years in the position. I think it's really hard to, you're drinking through a fire hose for the first year. So that would be my position.
Any, Commissioner Hawley?
Yeah, I kind of agree with a lot of what's been said. I think it does take more than a year to have any sense of it in all of the committees and commissions we sit on. And I also wondered if the term shouldn't be parallel to the term of the rest of us. It seems odd that we stick out in April, and so but I don't know from a technical standpoint what we need to do to continue Ms. Wilson until December 31.
Well, I think as the board, we can decide to extend her term, and correct me if I'm wrong, Council Rice, that we as the board can extend her term until 12/31. That would be one separate action, and then we can take a separate action to change the bylaws to make it, and I'm hearing clearly it's a 2-year term, there's a consensus here that it would be a 2-year term.
And it would leave the option, I mean, the member at large could always come back and say, I want to apply for a new 2-year term, but it does open it up every 2 years so that other people want to bite at the apple, so to speak.
And I'm hearing Commissioner Hawley say very clearly that he'd like the terms to match those of the appointments on a calendar year basis.
It just seems
okay.
logical.
So and again, stop me at any time, Commissioner Rice, excuse me, Council Rice, if I've added a 6th person here, no offense. If we're moving forward, can this board at this time extend Commissioner Wilson's term to expire 12/31/14 at this time, or are we compelled to refly the position, this non-stipend position? Can we move forward to extend that, and in concert with, and we entertain a motion and second it and pass it accordingly?
At the next meeting.
At the next meeting. All right, so let's do one matter first. Do I have a motion to extend Commissioner Wilson's term for the next meeting, or do we?
We'll put it on the agenda for the next
Okay, we'll put it on the agenda. Okay, now, can we also at this time, or for the next month, also discuss agendizing the 2-year term?
Did we ask Ms. Wilson if she wanted?
I think she said that. I heard her say that, but maybe it was a little low in volume. Commissioner Wilson, please speak up at any time. Do you want to be on the board?
Yes, I also feel that there's so much information for one person to really get a grasp of it in a single year is very, very difficult, and I think that the 2-year term would give everyone just more history in order to make more effective decisions. So I think the term 1 year is too short. 2 years would give, I think, it'd be a nice blend to give everybody else an opportunity if they so choose to change out the public member.
Okay, so I'm hearing clearly this will be agendized for the next meeting, and we need not take any further action at this time. Okay.
And a point of information to Commissioner Hawley's question about going on the same cycle. I think that's inherently challenging because, of course, the city council appointments are made by the mayor once the mayor is elected, and the supervisorial appointments are made by the chair of the board of supervisors, and the public member is selected by the other four. So really the public member can't be selected until the other ones are put in place.
But I guess the question comes, can we do this on a calendar year basis rather than just an arbitrary month of the year? I think it becomes cumbersome if we do it in April or October, and right when they're middle of, in this case, very important business.
Mr. Chair, I think we could still jump in. I mean, the city is appointed, they appoint a new person. If we do this December 34th or 31st, you're going to have an overlap there anyway, but you could still do it for the January meeting to appoint, because the county's still going to have, for that meeting, the county, whoever the existing county people will still be, they're not going to be, the new appointments won't occur until the meeting in February.
That is correct.
After chair meets, so.
Okay. All right, so having said that, let's agendize both of those items for the next meeting, and we'll move on from there. Now, I think we've given everybody an opportunity to speak, so that was 7.2. 7.3. No action on 7.2. Discussion and possible action regarding potential future strategic planning efforts for the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. Mr. Ward.
Yes, I provided a staff report that gave an overview as to what strategic planning, what questions a strategic planning process endeavors to address. Namely, what does the organization do, for whom does it do those activities, and how does it excel in those activities? And generally, our purpose describes fairly well what the organization does, and for whom does it do those activities, of course, the larger community, and how does it excel at those activities? That can either be judged by the regulatory agencies, or this board, or the larger public. But in trying to prepare this report for the board, there were 4 questions that really I could use some additional direction on. And those questions are, is the board directing staff to begin developing a process to develop short, medium, and long-term goals beyond those described in the attached purposes and the annually reviewed work plan? 2, should staff present a more comprehensive set of alternative means to develop short, medium, and long-term goals? This report just discussed strategic planning. 3, should staff consider procuring or hiring consultants in such a process, or would the board prefer to consider other potentially less costly options, which is a pretty different approach, and so I'd be happy to discuss those options, but they are fairly different, and I would appreciate the board's guidance. And 4th, would the board prefer that the results of such a planning process be binding or advisory on subsequent authority boards? That is actually a fairly central question, because those activities that the board has adopted that are binding are typically required by a regulatory agency. And so those are required year after year, even with a new board. Whereas, were this board to adopt a policy position, for example, it's entirely possible that the next incarnation of this board would adopt a different policy position, and that's perfectly acceptable. What is challenging is a circumstance where one board tries to adopt a policy position that the other board is not allowed to change without clarifying exactly how or when or under what circumstances those changes could be made. So those are the questions that I would appreciate some additional guidance on. I'd be happy to discuss strategic planning or any of the contents of the report.
Commissioners?
Well, item E is already off. Develop, adopt, and implement ordinances, and that's already been changed. So any ordinances that this board adopts has to be approved by the city and county before it can go into effect. So I don't, that would be one item I have an issue with that would need to be reworded.
Any other comments from the commissioners?
In order to change that, there would need to be an adopted change to the joint powers agreement.
So it's in conflict to the recent amendment we made.
No, this is quoted from the recent amendment. This is the amended joint powers agreement.
Okay. I guess it needs clarification as because this board doesn't pass an ordinance that affects the whole city and county unless the city and the county approve it.
Yes, understood and acknowledged.
But by reading that,
but still the board can adopt ordinances and
they just don't
empowered to do that, just not without the separate approval of the city and the county, as you say.
So maybe that needs to be included in E.
Any other board comments?
I just want to say that I think we could go forward with strategic planning regardless of what board sits here. I know the city has a comprehensive strategic plan and we visit it annually, and I think we review it actually semi-annually. And so, you know, that's usually kind of a living document. And I don't know how our funders have an expectation that it be ongoing necessarily. That really doesn't give me much heartburn. I think we have to do planning. Sure. I'm real hesitant to procure more consultation costs, and maybe we could even start by taking a look at the work plan carefully and taking a look at what can be taken off and what we can do with that to give us a starting place. But those comprehensive strategic plans take a long time, and they're usually a real costly activity. And I'd like to avoid both those things if we can, although I think it's important.
Understood.
In other words, I think we need to get to a place where we can hire a director, somebody like that could shepherd in a more comprehensive plan as we go, is my hope.
Other
That's what we ran into before, though, is not having that. That was brought up in the last couple of meetings. The fact of us not having a short, medium term, as well as the R3 report, is
well, my mindset on this is that we are in the very process. If you look at question number 1 of the board directing staff to begin developing a process to develop short, medium, and long-term goals beyond those described in the attached purposes and annually reviewed work plan, we've got an R3 document in front of us that's requesting that very same thing, and that will be addressed. So I'm not so sure that this action which we're requiring, looking at possibly moving forward, is not going to be addressed in the R3 report, which is on this very agenda today. And I'm inclined to kind of get through the R3 report first and its recommendations before we start moving in another direction. Do other commissioners have an opinion different than that?
Yeah, I think we should table it. Table?
Okay. So do we have a motion to table?
Move to table.
Okay, that's Sullivan. And second on that, would that be?
Second.
Okay. Close off the board comments. At this point, we'll take a vote on that now at this point. Unless there's any further discussion on the tabling.
Public comment?
Yes, go ahead. Public comments. This will be on the tabling.
Point of order. Do we need to vote on moving the table? I thought that was always kind of the discretion of the chair at that point. Because if we're tabling...
Removing an item, tabling it, I think we need a vote.
Okay. But are we a public discussion on this item if we're tabling?
Yes, because it's agendized.
Okay.
And again, in every effort to be as open and as transparent as possible, I want to give the public an opportunity to opine on things. Sometimes things are going to move a little slower, but I think this is prudent, good business in keeping the public engaged. So, Mr. Nunn, go ahead.
7.3 might be a good one to include the task force on.
Okay, so, and that would be something after it comes off the table. All right. Are there any other public comments? All right, seeing no, that we'll close that and we'll move on to an actual vote. And I see Commissioner Wilson is not here, so we'll go from there and let's see if anybody see where she went? Okay. Okay, let's call the question at this point. Karen, would you call a vote on that, 7.3.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Gitlin?
That would be yes, and that's the motion to table. So we'll move on, that's 7.3. We'll move on to 7.4, discussion and possible action regarding memo from Authority Legal Counsel Martha Rice regarding the relationship between AB 341 and Authority ordinances. Counsel Rice?
At the last regular meeting, there was some questions regarding repealing Ordinance 2008-01 and replacing it in part with Ordinance 2014-02, and whether that was going to put more responsibilities on the city and or the county with regards to AB 341. And specifically, the question was whether AB 341 requires an ordinance be put in place. I did a little research. I came up with a summary of the requirements and what it takes to comply with AB 341. I sent that memo out to the commissioners for their information. It's included with the agenda for today. And the short answer is that AB 341 does not require an ordinance. An ordinance can be part of a mandatory commercial recycling program, but it's not required. And by removing the ordinance that did make up part of the mandatory commercial recycling program for Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority, the authority is still the responsible regional agency for complying with that law. So neither the city nor the county is receiving any additional responsibilities by repealing, at least in regards to AB 341, repealing 2008-01 and replacing it with 2014-02.
Okay, that again is for clarification for the city commissioners who had some questions about that, so I'm going to defer to Commissioners Gastineau or Commissioners Holly for any questions on 714.
Thank you. Ron, do you want to? I'll just say that I think you answered my questions. My concern that by enacting this this ordinance 2014-02, we were going to be piling extra work on the city and the county, and they don't have the staff or the expertise to do two separate reports. And I wanted to make sure that the authority would continue to be responsible for preparing this report, and it appears that that's very possible. So you've answered my question. I appreciate the delay in getting this approved.
Commissioner Gastineau? Okay. All right. So then we'll close that.
I have
I'm
some
sorry.
comments on this.
I'm sorry. Excuse me for interrupting you. Go right ahead if you have comments. I wanted to clarify for the city commissioners who had some issues with it. So go ahead, Commissioner Wilson.
Okay. I'd like to take a few minutes to kind of go over the AB 341. I did quite a bit of research on this, and I have a bit of history going back with this body, because it's kind of a complex piece of legislation. And basically, I want to read here right from the law itself. It states, the legislature hereby declares that it is a policy goal of the state that is not less than 75% of solid waste generated be source reduced, recycled, or composted by the year 2020 and annually thereafter, notwithstanding subdivision. And then this part here it sounds a little bit contrary to what you just heard. It says, the department shall not establish or enforce a diversion rate on a city or county that is greater than 50% diversion rate established pursuant to section 41780. And again, I've gone through the legislative analysis on this, and they point out that AB 341 carefully stops short of changing the mandate established in the Integrated Waste Management AB, forgot that number now, regarding the 50% solid waste diversion from disposal. And so instead of replacing that 50% diversion mandate that's mandated with a 75% diversion mandate, they utilize what is called a legislative policy. And the reason they did this is that if they would have changed that from the 50% to the 75%, they would have opened themselves up for California, CEQA it's called, and a NEPA, California Environmental Quality Act, and would have automatically been triggered, because that would you'd have to say what the impact would be upon the business community and everyone else. So they very carefully worded it, and it is a goal, and not a mandate to strive towards the 75%. And Cal Recycle is not directed to divert at least 75% from disposal. The mandate that is in place is 50% diversion. And further, it goes on that the AB 341 specifically states that Cal Recycle shall not establish or enforce a diversion rate on a jurisdiction that exceeds the current 50% rate. So there's really two parts to this law. There's 5 sections of the law, but the 2 main ones that you hear about all the time is the 75% diversion goal. It's not a mandate, it's a goal. And the second one that you'll hear about is the mandatory commercial recycling, and that's on anybody with a bin that exceeds 4 cubic yards, or if there are 5 apartments or more. They are asked to do one of the following. They have to source separate their recyclables and either self-haul or arrange for separate collections of the recyclables. So it goes on a little bit further here, and it talks about for the businesses, it says the state will not be taking enforcement action on businesses that do not comply with the requirements, nor will jurisdictions be required to enforce them. What is required of the business community, and what I did is I went out and I got copies of where to put forward. It's called this mandatory commercial recycling program. And I'm familiar with this because this came up previously before the task force, before it came before this body. And this, at this time when this program was put forward by this authority, it had in here that to educate, monitor, report, and enforce. It had 4 things in here. And when going back and reading the actual law, which I pulled the AB 341, it does not require enforcement. At that point in time, after bringing forward, I got copies of some, I have 4 different city-county areas. I've got Lake County, Torrance, Menifee, and Clear Lake, and I got copies of their programs as well. And they were kind enough to send those. Basically, their programs require monitoring, educate, and report. No enforcement. So I have all these. I can also submit these today on what the other counties are requiring. And anyway, so with that information, was able at that point in time when the original draft came out from Mr. Hendricks back in May of 2012, we were able to put forward an edited version, and this is the Del Norte Mandatory Commercial Recycling Program. And again, what's been removed is the enforcement arm. So the enforcement arm has been taken out of there. And the other thing that's important to know is that, again, just like Council had gone over, Cal Recycle has a really good background on this. They have frequently asked questions. And I just did a kind of a cut and paste on some of the questions here on, will my city county need to adopt a mandatory commercial recycling ordinance? No. So I'll send this copy on to the other commissioners here, but basically, again, what's still in play is the AB 939, which is the 50% diversion, and Cal Recycle will continue, it says, to follow its historical process of reviewing jurisdictions' AB 939 compliance by focusing on this program. So they're using the mandate in order to check to see if this program is being complied with. And it says, under enforcement, they ask, is there a requirement for a local jurisdiction to enforce the regulation? And it says no. The regulation does not require jurisdiction enforcement. And under enforcement again, it asks, is there enforcement component for any entity in the regulation? So it's talking about this body. And what they say is as long as we've made a good faith effort in implementing the program, which educate, monitor, and report, there is no enforcement on this body. So I've kind of done a bit of research because I know we've heard that it's going to be changing things down the road, and it's a worthy goal. I believe that the law was put in place in order to set up structures, because we all recycle at our house, but or business, but then there are other where it goes after it's picked up is is very unclear now. They don't have any numbers on it, if it's being sorted, and so I think that really the law will help address some of those things, getting some more information to maybe make sure that things that we recycle today will be going to the right areas and not into a landfill. So that's kind of my take on what I got from the law, and at this point there is no enforcement options on commercial customers. And as far as what this body needs to do, again, it's that educate, monitor, and report. And I know we've heard several times that we're going to have a lot of things that are going to happen because of this law, and it's already covered. And the reason they're not going again to that 75 percentile is that it would trigger this CEQA and the NEPA, and it would open up a whole can of worms. So it's only a goal, and there is nothing that it can be enforced.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson. I want to move this on. It's very well researched, and I appreciate your bringing that to the board's attention. I'm going to ask for additional comments from the board on 7.4. Give everybody a bite of the apple. Commissioner Sullivan, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I'm just reading off, as Commissioner Wilson says, it's off the site that says nothing about enforcement.
Okay.
So I agree. Good job.
All right, so I'm hearing clearly that we will take no action on AB 341. Council Rice, is there any action to be taken on 341?
No, it was just informational.
It's advisory? Okay. All right, so we'll move on and close off discussion and move. I'm sorry?
Public comment.
If we're taking no action, do we need public comment?
Yes, on any agendized item.
Okay. 7.4, public comments on discussion and possible action regarding memo from Authority Legal Counsel Martha Rice regarding the relationship between AB 341 and authority ordinances.
Okay. Elizabeth Henry, and county residents. I've done a lot of research too, and I think it's important to pay attention to Ms. Rice's comment about that the agency is the one that is responsible. So no matter whether it's 75% or whatever, if you're not carrying out the guidelines of mandatory collection and educating, but having it actually show some progress, you are going to be the ones that are not in compliance, not the business owner. I agree the state's not going to come down and do anything, but there's no reason to hang back and not do anything just because the state is at this point. I agree that I read all the same things that Mary read about they've stopped because of the CEQA. They don't want to do an EIR right now, which they would have to do, but the thought is there, and this is the direction they're going. They are doing updates to the legislature, and I think these would be really interesting to read because they've also had a lot of public hearings where someone from this county could have gone and put input. They are listening to people, but they are still talking about enforcement. They are talking about doing it after they do some solid waste studies, what's happening with the waste stream in 2014, 2015, and 2016. So there's no assurance that nothing's going to happen. In fact, they've discussed in this one document, and I'd be glad to make these available to you, that they may even want to decrease the amounts from 4 cubic yards for a business to 2, and have every multi-dwelling, which is apartments, be under the mandatory commercial recycling. So I think it's sticking your head in the sand by not being aware of what's going on and planning for it, because it is coming around the bend. So I don't want to debate with Commissioner Wilson. I know that it's a complex law, but I just think you should be aware that that things are changing, probably every week, every month, and there's supposed to be a report to the legislature, January 2014. I haven't been able to find it. I don't know whether they're taking the October 2013 as the report, but I'm looking for it, and that would be the latest on what's going on this issue. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Henry. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we have one? Okay.
Catherine Murray, I'm a resident of the city and the county. I think it would be more appropriate to listen to your legal counsel rather than someone who is a layperson, not a lawyer. With all due respect, we do have in the background the first paragraph through state mandated local programs, and it's really critical that our legal counsel, who has a legal mind, who has distilled all this information, she's the expert in this area, and it's really important that we follow what our legal counsel tells us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Is there anything that you have that disagree with that I might have said?
Well, we'll hold on a second, Commissioner Wilson, so we don't get the banner back and forth. Councilmember Murray, would you come back up and?
I think that was the council. That's Council Rice.
Okay. Who were you talking to? I wasn't sure. Okay. So let's close out public comments first.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now we'll bring it back to the board. Now, is your question to Catherine Murray's comments, or did you want to address?
I'm just reading this directly off of the Cal Recycle reporting requirements, in that for reporting any business or jurisdictions that need to report, the Cal Recycle will only look at how they implement the education, outreach, and monitoring activities, and that the state will not be taking enforcement action on businesses that do not comply with requirements, nor will jurisdictions be required to enforce them. So I believe that we aren't required to enforce, and that's what I get out of the this AB 341.
Yes, on that point, you're correct. And what's mandatory of the local government is to have a local program, which involves education, outreach, and monitoring of local business. So, by interacting with the businesses, the agency can help them find opportunities for recycling, etc. Specifically, an ordinance, which would be an enforcement mechanism, is not required. It can be used. And I think one of the reasons, anyways, I think this was thought about when the last franchise agreement was written, and that's why businesses were given recycling with certain size bins, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, I think on the main points, yes, 75% is a goal. It's not a mandate. 50% is the mandate, and we are required to have a local program. So.
And for the board's benefit and those people at home, our mandatory commercial recycling program that we're implementing here in Del Norte is available on our website. If you look at our recycling page, it's the last link on that page.
Ted, what's the diversion rate we're at right now? Just the most
well,
recent
it's a really excellent and somewhat complicated question. I'd say crudely around 60%, but the reason why I say crudely is that come 2006, they changed the measurement system from a diversion system to a disposal cap. And so we don't actually measure and report diversion the way we once did.
Does Recology have an idea? Do you guys have an idea what the diversion rate is for? So does Hambros know?
Like I said,
you know what I'd like to suggest, and so if we can get some clear delineage, perhaps at the next meeting, Hambro WSG and Recology, maybe you can share with us your numbers. Well, okay.
No, you're not.
I don't know if it's necessary.
Bring it to the next meeting.
Let's wait till the next meeting, and then so we have clarity on this. Okay, and let's bring it back and to our board right now, and I'm hearing clearly that no member, unless a board member wishes to make a motion at this time regarding.
Mr. Chair, I am gonna, just a point of information, I have 10 minutes and I have no daycare after that.
Okay. All right, we're moving along. Okay, so we'll close off discussion. There's no action on 7.4 at this time. We'll move on to 7.5, discussion possible action regarding reintroducing and waiving the first reading of Authority Ordinance 2014-02 regarding flow control and franchises. Go ahead, Mr. Ward, and then Council
I'll let
Rice.
Ms. Rice.
And let's try to move as quick as we can so we can get Commissioner Sullivan's votes on these.
So this topic is reintroducing and waiving the first reading of ordinance number 2014-02. This is the ordinance that would be sort of replacing some of the substantive provisions of 2008-01. This was introduced at the last regular meeting but did not pass pending clarification on AB 341. Since we have that clarification at this point, we've brought it back for the board's consideration.
Okay, having said that, at this point, let's bring it back to, I'm trying to move things along quickly. Do we need to have public comment before or after we hear from the board?
It doesn't matter, but you need to have it before the vote.
Okay, 7.5, public comment, discussion regarding reintroducing, waiving first reading of authority ordinance at this time. Public comments, please. And again, thank you, Ms. Henry, for making your matters cogent and brief as best we can.
Elizabeth Henry, county resident again. I'm here to advocate strongly that you do not replace the current ordinance 2008-01. There's no reason to do it. At the the local task force meeting, from which the recommendation came, 3 out of 11 people voted yes to forward it. 2 voted no, 1 abstained. Now, I know there are 5 members that weren't there, but there were some good reasons that they weren't, and so I think this kind of an important matter needs to be voted on when everybody can be there, that, doesn't have to work or other real situations. So that's number 1. Rescinding the ordinance is going to put you backwards while the state moves forward. And again, we can debate AB 341, but their language is in your ordinance already. The definitions, responsible parties. Why take that out at this point? It's not harming anyone. And I know what the hot issue is. It's the fact that the landlords are required to provide basic collection services for tenants. And that, I think, is part of the whole goal of preventing blight, for tenants to have somewhere to put their garbage, to recycle. And I think the current ordinances meet all your needs. And, at some point down the line, when the state changes its mind, you may be having to redo them. And instead of provoking more controversy in the public, I think you should keep what you have. And the whole idea that because there's one public member, you can't keep an ordinance. You shouldn't make ordinances. Boards appoint all kinds of people.
You can wrap up your comments, please. Thank you.
Appoint people to very important committees where they make extremely important decisions. I think a public member is equal to all of you and is responsible to the public out in the community. So please don't change them.
Thank you. Additional comments at this time? And you know what, Council Rice, I realize that Commissioner Sullivan has to leave. We have a closed session also, and I guess it's too late to do anything about it now. I would have liked to have taken these out of priority. All right, there's nothing more to say at this point. If Commissioner Sullivan needs to leave, he has to leave at this point. So let's move forward on the comments, and then maybe we can take the vote on this.
Andy Larson, the county, make it short and sweet. Part of 2008-01, the legal part of holding people responsible for other people's trash is ludicrous and shouldn't be there. There are more parts of 2000. There was a lot of studies done on that. You guys have gone over it. It needs to go away and use your flow control on what you're doing now. 2008, you don't need to be babysitting other people and being held responsible for the trash.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Larson. Okay, more comments?
Catherine Murray, city and county resident. I sit on the Secure Rural Schools Committee, which Mr. Sullivan does as well. We have seen over and over again where people do illegal dumping in the state and national forests. I believe that that would happen if we take out the language to require landlords to provide the garbage for their tenants, and I disagree with Mr. Larson, and I agree with Ms. Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Lonsdale, and I appreciate brevity at your comments if you can, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Bill Lonsdale again. Removing responsibility undercuts enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lonsdale. Okay, so let's bring it back to the board for action, and at this point, any further discussion on board, and if not, on 7.1, I'll entertain a motion for action regarding
Just because this authority takes away the ordinance doesn't prevent it being brought to the city or county as a separate ordinance to be passed at the city and county where it should have been originally. Well, it doesn't.
Let's keep our
talk
comments.
To your supervisor and have them bring it up to the board of supervisors. Talk to your council person. This is not preventing just because the authority takes away this. My position is the authority shouldn't be in the position of the enforcement thing. It should follow the city and county. So I move to approve this, reintroduce and waive the first reading of the authority ordinance 2014-02.
Second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any additional board comments? Hearing. Yes,
well, I would say I wanted to add that it wasn't just the landlords being responsible for paying for the trash. It was they were held criminally responsible at the workshops that we went to. Within this ordinance, they are held criminally responsible under Section 8.01. And so if one of their tenants were to dump, then they could get a misdemeanor, the landlord, not the person who did the action. So that was the largest objection that we had during the public workshops that we did, and that was my comment.
Okay. Any additional board comments? Okay, we'll call the vote.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes?
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Chairman Gitlin?
Yes. Okay, motion passes. Okay, and again, we're sorry to lose you on some important issues, Commissioner Sullivan, but you got to take care of family first. Okay, 7.6, discussion and possible action regarding any additional comments to be submitted by commissioners on R3 Consulting Group's draft report assessment of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. Mr. Ward?
I received an email with comments from Mr. Gastineau and another one from Chair Gitlin. The comments from Mr. Gitlin were received after the publication of the agenda, so they're available there as all the comments submitted in association with this report. My understanding from the last meeting on April 1st was this was the deadline to receive comments and to have them forwarded, and so that's what this agenda item is about.
And I did put my comments forwarded. I heard directly from Mr. Wallace to submit him directly to him, and so that's where I submitted my comments on Friday.
And I would appreciate a copy of those. I have not received them.
Yeah, certainly.
Additional commissioners' comments at this time? Okay, we'll again open up the public for discussion. I too submitted my comments directly to Mr. Wallace and copied it to the acting director at this time, and they are they're as public as they can be. If they wish to be, I'll be happy to submit those to anyone who wishes to see them at this point. Public comments on 7.6? No public comments? Okay, we'll bring it back to the board. What discussion and possible action regarding any additional comments? What would be the action we would take, Ted, at this point?
My understanding from the direction of the last meeting was that any comments received by today from the commissioners were to be submitted, and I will do so.
Okay, so in this case now, Commissioner Holly, is that something you've done? Have you submitted comments also?
I felt relatively happy, I think, with the report, the draft report, so I didn't have anything other than what was said at the last one.
Okay, so we do have on record comments from, and I'm not sure where Commissioner Sullivan stands on this, if he submitted comments, but I read Commissioner Gastineau, and I read, I understand, Mary, Commissioner Wilson also, so we have at least 3 sets of comments. I'm not here, he's not here to answer the question. Did Commissioner Sullivan submit comments?
I did not receive anything from Mr. Sullivan.
Okay. Okay, so there's no additional action to take at this point. At this point, I will open up public comments. Again, no one having anything, bring it back to the board, and no comments, so we'll move on. 7.7, discussion regarding status for the calendar year 13-14 budget and expenditures and process for preparing and approving budget for fiscal year 14-15. Ted?
Of course, I had hoped that I could get to the point of having a draft budget at this point, but with the frequency of meetings and the intensity of meetings that we've had, that's not where I was able to get to. So the staff report describes some of the large issues that are being considered as I develop the draft budget. Significantly, of course, we'll get numbers from the Delaware County Auditor's Office for salaries and benefits, as well as the interfund cost plan. Our approach will be a status quo approach to staffing, and that places funds in the budget to be used either for staff or funds that could be transferred for increased expenses for legal counsel or the treasurer controller or professional services in lieu of staff, if that need be. There will be significant budget changes associated with the landfill obligations. These will include more intensive sampling and analysis of groundwater. It's called a constituents of concern analysis. We have to do that every 5 years at the Crescent City landfill, and we are obliged to conduct this more intensive sampling every 5 years. We're currently working with technicians at North Coast Labs to both reduce and control those expenses and also to have cost projections so that those can be incorporated into the budget. Furthermore, the authority's budget will include a potential full payment of the waste discharge requirements fee at that higher level, and we'll hope that that goes down, but we can't really be assured of that until the regional board says so. So, time allowing, next month we'll have a draft budget for your review.
Okay, very good. Any comments from the public on the budget? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Is there any action that the board wishes to take at this time, or we'll wait for next month's meeting?
Now, last time that the budget cycle came around, what happened was we were a bit under the gun to get the budget came to this body, and then it was approved to be sent out to the county and the city. And then once they approved it, it came back, and what got missed along the way was the opportunity for input from those of us here. And what I learned during that session last year was that if we are going to have any input, it needs to be done prior to sending it along to the county and the city. Because after it had been sent to them, I went to the county and city to talk about it, the budget at that point in time, and the commissioners told me that they felt that should have been included before they saw it. So we kind of got shortchanged on input for the budget. I have worked, I've gone back through the last, through 2007 and got the audited reports and have put together kind of a snapshot of the financial statements for the JPA. So it's kind of a grid. I want to submit this to Ted. And basically what I did, so everyone knows, was to just take every single thing off of the year-end statements and then kind of group them. You know, if there were 15 lines, I put it into one line, so that every single thing that is on this audited year-end report shows up on this page here, this single page here. So, and then by doing that, I was able to get down to you know, net revenue, net loss, and you'll see many negative numbers here. And so those show the difference between the revenue and the expenses. And so with that, that kind of gives us a tool to take a look at. So prior to, in order for us to get ready to move into look at the budget, this is a tool. What I did is I took this report and then I had a meeting with the county auditors. And the assistant auditor, Sherrick Crone, he reviewed all the numbers for accuracy. So they have been looked at by the auditor's office. And at that time, Mr. Shad and Mr. Crone were in the meeting, and they felt that the layout accurately reflected the profit-loss situation of the Solid Waste Authority. And with that, I did put together some notes at that meeting, which kind of addressed some of the confusing things that are on these reports and so then I can also forward these along to everyone here. So these are my notes from the meeting, and if you have any questions, you can kind of give me, give me a call in regards to those questions. But basically, again, it's from 2007. It's all of the audited numbers from the auditor's office every year is taken, condensed down, and put into this analysis. And so with this, what the auditors felt is that, we're not putting enough money aside I'll just pass my notes. The auditor did review my notes. I sent my notes to them for review and to see if they felt I had things accurate or not. They made a few changes. They sent them back, so they have been reviewed by the auditor. So if you can take a look at those later and looking at our financials. And what I'm hoping is that with this type of information, we can kind of make a projection on, what the future is going to look like and where it's going to be. And with those type of numbers, what we should be setting aside, what our losses have been. And in my notes, I kind of explain where the losses showed up. It was kind of confusing at first, but now I have a good handle on it after doing this exercise on where the losses were within these figures. So again, that's my comments on the budget, but I really hope we have a workshop or we have some time to go through this line by line.
I'm hearing clearly about this, and this is a rather significant issue, this budget. I'm going to bring this back to the board to see if we want to have a separate standalone meeting on the budget per Commissioner Wilson's suggestion. It's a serious matter and it shouldn't be glossed over. I'm also concerned about having this done in a timely way. Ted, what are your time constraints on this budget?
Our next regular board meeting would be May 14th, and
that's problematic. That's a date that I'm going to bring up. Sorry for interrupting you. We do have 2 supervisors who will be out of the area at CSAC. And I think I mentioned that in an email I sent to you before. So that becomes problematic. Then I was going to bring that up at the end of the meeting to address another alternative date, a day before, 2 days before, 1 day after on a Friday. So having said that, what's the time frame on getting your budget approved, looked at and approved?
I acknowledge that you sent the email that I just got today. As I drafted this staff report, I was anticipating our next regular meeting would be our regular meeting date, which is May 14th. And under that schedule, I would then bring the draft budget for review and comment for the City Council on May 19th and the Board of Supervisors on May 20th. Those are all fairly tight timelines. And we do need to have this, of course, approved by the end of June, so we may have a little bit more flexibility, but that would be the current time projection.
Does this board wish to have a standalone meeting on the budget, as per Commissioner Wilson's suggestion?
Yeah?
Okay, that would be a yes. I see the eyes are open up. All right, so what?
Just for a request, just to recognize that there is supporting, I really appreciate Karen's help, but extra meetings are challenging, and we've had a lot of them. And I really am eager to discuss this budget, and I really appreciate the opportunity to perhaps have it as a standalone item. But then I think on a practical basis, that may defer other activities that would have regularly occurred on the May meeting and shift them off to June.
Well, Ted, I'd like to tell you we're going to not, we're going to have a lot more special meetings, I'm afraid, as we get through this R3 report. I'm not afraid of it. I'm just telling you that we have work to do. And I appreciate the fact that all of our schedules are strained and pulled, and we all have issues, but there's no rushing this. There's no process where we can get through this quickly and feel that we're doing a good job. I'm inclined to set up a standalone meeting to discuss the budget and do so at a time frame which is convenient to all 5 of our commissioners. So I think what we need to do is find a date to do that very shortly, and then see if we can set it up again. I don't know the alternative. I'm open for suggestions. Commissioner Gastineau, Commissioner Holly, do you have a suggestion other than that?
No, I don't know exactly, Ted, where we are with the budget process. I don't know your timing and how much help Rich can be to you during this process. I don't think it needs to take a day or anything, but I think even if we have a 2-hour item, given what this happened to this meeting, that would be too much to handle in a regular meeting time. So maybe we could look at dates that might be available on a similar timeline. I will say, Ted, that even if we dealt with this on the 14th, it might be challenging to get the solid waste budget into the city council. We have our pre-agenda meeting at the 13th.
I understand that, Commissioner Hawley. What I would almost certainly have to do under the timeframes that I just laid out is I would have to submit the draft budget to the authority and to the city council agenda at the same time. And if there were any changes made at the authority meeting, then I would bring those in hand to the city council meeting.
You get it ahead of time. Yes.
Again, my apologies about the notification that we did not know that our twice yearly conference in Sacramento for CSAC came at a time when, I'm sorry that it wasn't announced earlier, but the reality is that I know factually that Commissioner Sullivan is not going to be here, and I know factually that I'm not going to be here, and we don't have any alternative supervisors come in. And I would be very much skeptical about bringing a new supervisor in to discuss these ongoing issues. What would you think about having a meeting, and I'm asking my board this now, the week of May 5th through 9th at a time convenient to all parties, pending the availability of the Flynn Center, to have our meeting and also to discuss the budget. And hopefully keep the amount of items at a minimum on the agenda. And I don't know how else to do this except that it has to be done, and has to be done judiciously. That would be the week of May 5th to 9th. Is there a...
I'm not here. I already have on the 5th.
Mm-hmm.
How about April 23rd?
Okay. Well, let me see.
I don't believe April 23rd is a very...
That's a Wednesday.
Rapid.
That's Redwood Coast Transit Authority meeting.
It is?
Yeah, and I'm...
Center at 3:30.
Yeah. I would say perhaps April 30th. that would work, if that can be arranged. That's a Wednesday. And then we could have our pre-agenda meeting 2 days prior to that, or certainly by the Friday, the 28th, and we can discuss the budget and hopefully a limited number of subjects on the agenda. Is that amenable to all parties here?
I can't do the 30th. How about the 28th?
The 28th, well, I know LAFCO is here at 4 in the afternoon. It would have to be,
I can meet in the
Yeah.
mornings.
okay, and the
How
28th?
about you guys?
I can.
I have that
Yeah.
thing they call work.
We'll write you a note.
Now, I realize that we're struggling here for dates. I know the Del Norte Expo is Thursday, the 1st, or May 1st, and, or Friday, May 2nd. Would either of those two dates work to discuss the budget and to keep a minimum subject for the agenda? Would either of those two dates work for all parties here?
Well,
May 1st or May 2nd?
May 1st looks good.
Ted?
I believe the first weekend in May, no, May 1st would work. I'm gone the 2nd and 3rd.
All right, so May 1st would work. I'm hearing that May 1st would work. Okay, I know it's a struggle. Let's do this slowly.
I'm sorry, I need to confirm, so.
No, May 1st will not work.
I don't think it will. I need to call and see what's been scheduled. I don't have this in front of me. I apologize. I did not
It's a
anticipate.
possibility.
I did not anticipate this conversation.
yeah, we don't.
No,
have
I appreciate that. That brings us to the week of May 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th,
You're not
and
here
9th.
Friday?
So it's up to you, to this board, how you
there's
want to
something-
proceed on this.
There's something each day for me that week.
On that week?
And, yeah, and the 6th, I'm gone out of town. So,
So then it becomes the following week after
First or the 2nd? May 1st or 2nd then?
well, Ted's checking on May 1st.
Yeah.
May 1st seems like the best shot at it so far.
Okay, well, let's take a 5-minute recess while we decide whether we can get that forward. Okay, 5-minute recess.
We can meet in another place too.
It's getting all the date. Okay, so we're going to, Mr. Ward, you'll get back to us regarding a possible alternative date of May 1st, and you'll get back to this board at a convenient, as soon as possible, once we have that information. Is that, would that be?
Is May, am I understanding correctly that the preferred date for this meeting, according to the board, would be May 1st?
That's what I'm hearing clearly from all the 4 people that are here, the 4 board members that are
Would
here.
a morning meeting be possible?
Commissioner Wilson?
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Okay.
That,
Well, it'd be fresher to really go over numbers, you know?
Okay. I will investigate that possibility.
okay, May 1st. Okay, well, let's see if we can, and by the way, this does not have to be at the Flynn Center. We can, I'm hearing clearly we can use the wastewater treatment room as a possible location, possibility, or even the firehouse, on Washington.
The firehouse would probably be preferred if we'd have to do it.
Okay, so I think the question is do we have a consensus on commissioners of being available for a 10 a.m. to 12 noon meeting on the budget? And that would suffice for our regularly scheduled meeting also, so any other items could be added on. I'm sorry, Mr. Ward, that we are loading you up. This is just no easy way to do this when you're juggling people's schedules.
I thought it was going to be a standalone, too.
Okay.
I think we may have to meet later in the month for the regular meeting.
Yeah, push that
Okay.
one back.
All right. So let's see if we can get a 10 to 12 noon Thursday, May 1st meeting at a location as yet to be determined, pending your schedule. And I realize that you are off and you have approved vacation days after that, so we'll try to work around your schedule. And if that doesn't work, we'll have to find another solution.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, moving on.
May 1st, 10 to 12?
It's, yeah, May 1st, 10 to 12 noon, and
And Chair Gitlin, are we going to discuss a meeting later on in the month?
yes, and I think at the same time, I don't think we finished the agenda, but
No.
as long as we're, let's do that right now. I know it's not agendized, but 7.8, let's just discuss that real quickly, and then we'll talk about an alternative
Well,
date.
I can address that very quickly. 7.8, I apologize that I mismatched what I put in the language of the agenda and the attachments, and so no action.
Okay, so we'll put that off and reintroduce it to the next meeting. Okay, now let's see if we can find a date convenient to all parties that would regularly have been scheduled Wednesday the 14th, May 14th that is, and let's see if we can find a date that meets with the approval the following week, May 19th through the 22nd, and I see the date May 21st is open all day for me. At a time convenient to all parties in the afternoon, if that's what works, and we'll see about the availability of the Flynn Center on May 21st. Give us an opportunity to do a pre-agenda on the 16th, and then have our meeting, the delayed meeting 1 week later. Is that within your approval, Commissioner Hawley?
I'm fine for the meeting itself, but I'll be at a meeting down south on the 16th, 15th.
Okay, so you won't be available for pre-agenda, which I think maybe we'll see what we can do about that. Okay. Now, Commissioner Gastineau for the 21st.
It's open right now.
Okay. Commissioner Wilson.
April?
No, we're talking about May. It's a week later.
Nothing.
Okay. We have 4 for 4, and I would appreciate Mr. Ward advising Commissioner Sullivan that the date has been changed. He's aware that he's not going to be here on the date in question, which was the 16th, but the 21st. Did I say that right? Sorry about that. That would be May the 14th. That meeting will not take place, and we'll defer to May the 21st at our 3:30 regularly scheduled time in an as yet unidentified location. Okay, we're good on that. All right, Now, I think at this time, we will go to closed session, and we will adjourn to closed session and then come back and report.
Do we have, I wanted to know if the commissioners have been able to complete their evaluations?
I do have mine.
Okay,
I've completed one, but not both.
okay.
Commissioner
Wilson?
Are you aware there was an evaluation? Okay.
When was that?
It was sent out
Maybe it went
via
to your
email.
junk mail.
Oh, I didn't get it. I did not receive it.
So
So I think
that's what it looks like.
we're missing Commissioner Sullivan, and 3 commissioners have not completed the evaluations, so.
So it sounds like this will be rediscussed at the meeting in question in June, in May 21st. Is that because we do not have the completed evaluation forms?
Yeah, I'll make sure that we get all the evaluations pulled together and compiled. And if they're ready before that meeting, then it'll be on the agenda. If they're not ready, then.
All right, do you physically want the copies that I've done, for instance? Would you like them now?
What we've done is in the past has given them to Joey Young. So if you could, since we're gonna wait till the next meeting, if you could get your evaluations to him when they're completed.
Now, the time frame on this, and we're talking about the May 21st meeting, a closed session would be agendized. And you want all the commissioners to have, and this is what it looks like, these evaluations on for personnel hearing done what date? Prior to May 21st or 2 days before?
Yes.
A week before?
Well, it would be best if we knew before it was time to print the agenda. So, you know, if the agenda goes out the Friday before, we want to have them all into personnel, you know, I'd say by Thursday.
The Thursday before that Wednesday meeting?
At a minimum.
Okay, so will you please resend the documents to all 5 commissioners, and so that we can
I
move
will, and
forward?
I will verbally confirm.
And then
that
ask, so everybody's clear on it, if commissioners can acknowledge that they've received it, so we don't have this, these misunderstandings, we can, the time is limited as it is, and we'd like to talk about issues which are pertinent and important at the time they wait.
Yes, Mr.
Yes.
Goodwin, may I ask for
Harvey.
a point of clarification? The reason I only did one is I took a look at the mid-management process, and that seemed like something we can do at just about at any time. But there's an evaluation process in the county evaluation policy for department heads that has some specific processes, and I don't think we've met them. It talks about 6 weeks prior to the scheduled evaluation, each appointed department head shall be notified of their upcoming performance evaluation by the county administrative officer. Upon notification, they have 2 weeks to submit a state of the department report. It's a little different process than just doing an evaluation. So that's why I concentrated on one and not the other, because it looked like we had some.
Well, I'm going to follow the direction of Council Rice on the protocol here, so that we have our work, we have our evaluations here in a timely way, and with enough with enough warning that meets all of Commissioner Holly's statements and requirement. So if we need to have this in a full 6 weeks ahead of time, we're pretty much at that point right now for a May 21st meeting. That would be about it. So I'm going to defer to you, Council Rice, on clarification. And feel free to get back to us on that if you don't have that answer forthwith.
Yeah, I think the next meeting is set for exactly 6 weeks from today. So I think I'll get back to you when I resend the evaluations out on the process that we'll be using. This is a little bit different because Ted is not a department head. He is the program manager. He is mid-management.
I had asked you about the evaluation of whether we should in fact do two sets of these, one as program manager and the other one as the acting director. And you said, I think unless I misunderstood you, Martha, that it can all be done on one set. Each one can be done, it's a combination. That's what I think I heard you say.
Yes, I mean,
Okay.
the program manager is Ted's job.
Right.
And that is what the mid-management form is used for. The intent of passing out what would be the director's evaluation form was to let the board know what the areas are that a director is evaluated on and be able to give Ted feedback on his job that he's been doing as filling in as the acting director. But that's not to be confused with the fact that he is just an acting director. He's not actually, a permanent director. He is the program manager. So the official evaluation would be the mid-management evaluation, and the director's evaluation is used as a tool for feedback and discussion between the board and Mr. Ward.
Go ahead, Commissioner Hawley.
That's how I approached it. That's why I just
But I think it's important that everybody have given this, in all fairness to Ted, have given this some thought and gone over the various issues, and 5 days or whatever we had it's not surprising that wasn't enough for some people if they're busy doing other things. So
Understand.
But
Okay.
we will have access to the requirements of the job. That's in there, because I didn't see it. I'm sure it's in my spam blocker.
I can pull up job descriptions if you'd like me to, and send that with the evaluations again.
I can look it up. Is it, where's it at?
I don't know if there's somewhere you can look it up. Last time we received it was from the county personnel office in a hard copy, so, but I could send it out.
Okay, well, I'd appreciate it. Give me a call, because of mine.
Okay.
I'll make sure you get it.
Thanks.
Then we'll move forward on that. So let me just review real quickly of our meeting schedule, and we'll need confirmations on all of these. We will have a standalone budget meeting on Thursday, May 1st, and I'm going to presume that will not need to be pre-agendized if it's just one subject, but if it is, then we'll be available prior to that. And then on May 21st will be our regularly scheduled Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority meeting. It'll be delayed 1 week, and that will have the regular agenda, which hopefully will include this closed session item, which we're going to defer today. Is that on everybody's understanding?
That sounds great.
Okay, Commissioner Wilson?
Yeah.
Good, and Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Okay, having said that, sorry for the tedium here. It's lots of things to do. We are adjourned.